You're tuned in to Tax Talk DC with the Office of Tax and Revenue. Join us as we offer insights on the city's tax initiatives, share important resources for residents, and get answers to some of your most pressing tax questions. Now, here's your host, Jennifer Valentine.
Hello, and welcome to Tax Talk DC, where we break down the tax topics that matter most to you. I'm your host, Jennifer Valentine, and we've got a great episode lined up for you today. Joining me is Office of Tax and Revenue Real Property Tax Administration expert, Patricia Watson. We'll be talking to Patricia about the District of Columbia's tax sale process, what it is, how it works, and how this OTR program impacts you as a taxpayer. So let's get into it, DC. Patricia, thanks so much for joining us today. Let's start by telling our listeners a bit about your background and your role at OTR.
All right. So thank you for the warm introduction, Ms. Valentine. So again, I'm Patricia Watson, and just a little bit about me. My background primarily stems a lot in finance. I worked about 14 plus years between different financial sectors before transitioning to Office of Tax and Revenue tax sale. I'm the tax sale unit manager, and I've been in tax sale since 2021. So very, very nearing 5 years, just shy. And the tax sale unit is comprised of quite a few different components. We not only facilitate the district's annual tax sale that I'll get into shortly, but we also handle redemptions, tax deeds, and filter questions to other units and agencies. So we're always willing to help. So just a little bit about me, but thank you for asking.
That's wonderful. Thanks for that information. So to get into the details, let's talk about tax sale. What is the district's annual tax lien sale, and what does it entail?
All right. So great first question. So that district's annual tax lien sale, it's a public auction that's held in person. It's legislated by law, which is conducted historically between the second and third week of July, and it's conducted annually. Now, we have other tax sales that occur subsequently, but the annual tax sale is the main in-person tax sale. And this tax sale is in which real property taxes that are delinquent are auctioned as a lien to the public. So if you think in terms of an automobile, you have a finance company. Well, that's that lien holder. That's exactly what's happening when it comes to a specific property's tax sale liens. If property A is delinquent for first and second half of 2022, that lien could be sold. If they're delinquent for first and second half 22, first and second half of 23, then that could be one lien also. So the lien amount and the periods will vary, but we'll never list a property that is less than 1 year of being delinquent in taxes, because that is the key. The taxes must be older than 1 year before the lien is eligible to be sold. And I'll go into more detail about amounts as we go through our interview.
Okay, thank you for that. And you mentioned that the sale is in person. Where would I get the information for where that sale is being held?
Okay. So we do post information to our Office of Tax and Revenue Real Property website. We post a flyer that announces the tax sale. But before the tax sale, the most important thing that we do have is we provide 2 days worth of tax sale seminars. We conduct a morning session on 2 different days, and you must register to attend. It's free. It's conducted virtually, but it's a lot of FAQs or facts and questions that you might have that if you're a property owner, you might have, or if you're a potential lien holder, you might have. We also post in the newspaper where our tax sale is going to be held. And then lastly, we do have a few different social media platforms. So if you are on LinkedIn, if you are on Twitter, and if you are on Facebook, you might see a ad or a flyer that's listing the upcoming tax sale, or a flyer that may have information for a upcoming tax sale seminar. So we're visible.
That's wonderful. That pre-seminar sounds like it would be really helpful to people who are looking for information. Tell us a little bit about how the properties are selected for the tax lien sale.
All right. So when it comes to the properties, as I shared earlier, the property must be at least 1 year in arrears. Hypothetically, so say the year is 2027. No lien owing taxes for 2027 will be included. Okay. Now, if they haven't remitted first half of 27, but they owe for first and second half of 2026, then only first and second half of 2026 would be eligible to be listed. Now, with that being said, we will never list a property that owes taxes less than $2,500 and less than $200 for vacant land. And vacant land is totally different than a residential or commercial property.
Understood. And how are the impacted property owners notified?
All right. So there's a couple different ways that we notify property owners. There are two different mailing periods that happen. The first that's associated with the tax sale lien and newspaper publishing is the issuance of the delinquency notice. And this typically is sent out in April. This is accompanied by a property tax bill with the amount that's due by May 31st. The second stage in that notification is called the courtesy notice, and this is traditionally sent in June as your final reminder and your opportunity to satisfy the outstanding taxes before the start of the auction. Both notices are sent to primary mailing address as well as the property. So it's going to be two different mailings. But not only are they mailed, they're also visible via mytax.dc.gov. You can search real property by address or Suffolk Square and Lot. Then you can click on billing, and it will show all of the bills that are listed and all notices that are sent. So we make sure it's convenient for property owners that might be traveling. They might use it as a rental property to be able to access the mailing notices. And both notices, they also provide additional resources to property owners to avoid the tax sale. And then finally, OTR also publishes the list of properties that are impacted by tax lien sale, or what we refer to as tax sale eligible. We publish to two different newspapers. Typically, it's the Washington Informer as well as the Washington Times. And then the list is also posted to our Office of Tax and Revenue Real Property website under tax sale notices. You'll see tax sale notices sub-tab and tax sale listing tabs. And you can click open and open the PDF file, and you can review the notices as well. So we try to be very transparent, so that way we are targeting different avenues of notifying the property owner, but also notifying the public of an upcoming tax sale. There's been a few different instances where I say this neighbor is your friend, meaning if it's maybe someone that doesn't come out as often and they typically stay at home a lot, and the neighbor sees the newspaper. We've received calls from the neighbor concerned about, the neighbor's home listing, and so then they're letting them know, and then we're engaging with the actual property owner, making sure that they're informed. So our job is to inform, make aware, so that way we can collect taxes that are owed to the district.
Yes, it sounds like you're doing a really good job of making everyone aware of the responsibility there. You did mention that in the notice there are options available for possibly avoiding the tax sale. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How can they avoid it, and what are the specific options available to them?
Right, excellent question. And this actually arises quite often. So the primary opportunity and assistance that's available is the forbearance application. If you think in terms of a loan, it follows the same suit. Our application opens when the delinquency notices generate. That is the trigger for the system to begin accepting applications for forbearance. And only those that receive a delinquency notice can apply for forbearance. The system won't allow it if they haven't. So the key to forbearance is to be as informative as possible. There's a couple different scenarios with the forbearance application. For example, embedded in the application, it states that if a property has the homestead benefit and the balance delinquent is under $7,500, the mayor shall approve. Those applications are submitted, we review them, and my unit automatically approves it because they have homestead and their balance is under the $7,500 threshold. Then there's instances where it might require additional hardship documentation and review. Say a property owner recently passed away in 2023, and now the home is delinquent in taxes. Mm-hmm. A relative or administrator of this estate submitted the forbearance application. They wrote their hardship. Mm-hmm. They provided letters of administration and or probate case documents. So when we review it, okay, probate case is active and open, we notate it, and then we move forward with review and approval. Do we approve applications without homestead? Yes, we do, but that's going to require your hardship story and or proof of documentation. And once those applications are submitted, my unit jumps in, they reach out, even if documentation isn't submitted. We try to see what we can find out, what's the backstory, what types of documentation do you have? Can you email it to me so it can be reviewed and attached? So it's not an automatic denial. There's situations where we might make a decision to do a one-time approval, especially if someone recently passed away and maybe they don't have probate established yet. Or if someone lost their job and they're having trouble paying and staying on top and they just might have fallen behind, but then we can go back and look and say, okay, well, they've owned this property since 2010. They've never been delinquent. So this story is a story and it makes sense. So this is justifiable. Then we can recommend a one-time approval in hopes that they can be able to establish a job. And then there's also the opportunity that when the forbearance is approved, then they have the opportunity mid-August to apply for a payment plan. And I think those two go hand in hand. You asked me about what options. We have forbearance. And as I shared, if the forbearance is approved at the conclusion and reconciliation of the tax sale, then that opens the payment plan window. And then lastly, when we're talking to property owners and they're asking questions about their delinquency, we're also looking to see if they have homestead. Do you have senior benefit? Are you interested in a deferral? Because those are all other programs that are within OTR, Office of Tax and Revenue, that we can submit a request to that unit to have them reach out. So it's more than, I don't know what to do. Let us help you, and then we can direct you. And then there's also the last thing is the AARP, as well as the Council for the Elderly. And so if we come across someone that might not have the assistance of their family and they're stuck between, what to do or they need additional assistance, then we'll provide them the contact number to AARP or the Council for the Elderly. Or if they're not able to comprehend or understand what we're saying, then we'll provide, with their permission, the contact directly to our AARP or Council for the Elderly contact. So there's a couple different options. And then the final contact, which is also listed on the delinquent notices, is the Office of the Ombudsman. And the Ombudsman is there to help with additional assistance for real property residential owners.
Okay. And to back up a little bit, for those who might not know, can you just tell us what homestead is?
Yes. So homestead benefit is a benefit for if it's your primary residence, you can qualify for a benefit. And it's not within my purview to really break down on how the deduction is calculated. But to give an example, I've seen a property owner where, say, first half of whichever period taxes were $1,500. After the homestead benefit was instated, it brought the taxes down to $1,000. So it's going to be different for every property depending upon what their value is. But as you can see, if someone is maybe on a fixed income, it definitely helps. And then if they're of age for senior, then that would be an additional benefit. And there's also the disabled benefit.
Absolutely. That's a lot of wonderful information. Thank you so much for that. So I did want to get into what happens when the property lien is purchased at the sale. A lot of people, I think, believe that the property is considered sold. Is that accurate?
No, that is not accurate. And before I delve into that, there was a story that I have to share that goes along with that. But to answer your question first, no, the property is not sold. As I shared earlier, we're selling liens.
Yes.
Liens, not the property. So, a lot of property owners and even some inexperienced lien holders think that they've bought the property and they're ready to get started. And our particular municipality is not a auction to deed. We're auction to certificate. And I think that's the clear distinction.
Okay.
So basically, the tax sale means that they haven't lost their home, they just have lost the title. The lien has been sold. So only the outstanding tax liens are sold, which is what's foreclosed on by the lien purchaser through DC Superior Court. Mm-hmm. To give you a quick story, we had a prior year's lien holder give me a call and shared that he participated in such and such annual tax sale, and he purchased the lien. Now, I'm saying lien because that's what he purchased. He purchased the lien.
Right.
And he was driving by inspecting his liens, and someone was cutting the grass at the place where he purchased the lien. And I politely informed him that you didn't buy the home. You purchased the lien for that particular tax sale year. You're not allowed to encroach. You're not allowed to trespass. And even in our tax sale seminars, we highlight that you do not own the property. You cannot encroach. That could be considered trespassing and a legal offense. So we really try to highlight that. And I try to also make sure that my unit and myself, when we're speaking to property owners, we're giving more assurance that you haven't lost your home. It is a process that can take up to 3 years. So, just to kind of give them peace of mind that just because the lien was sold doesn't mean your house is going to walk away from you tomorrow. And we don't want that to be translated.
Absolutely. And thinking about that, I think this would be a good place to talk about redemption. So how might a property owner redeem their property after the tax lien sale? Let's start with how long they have to redeem the property after the sale.
So they have infinity, not really, but they have until the order and judgment has been issued. And just to give you an example, we say it could take up to 3 years. It could also take longer than that. We've had a case from a 2016 tax sale that just went to order and judgment.
Wow.
And for the sake of this conversation, this is 2025. Yes. So you can see the time frame.
Yes.
So that's why we say it can take up to 3 years, but it can take longer. But they have until the court order and judgment has been granted.
Okay. And let's think about the key points in that timeline. What would the property owner have to pay after the tax lien sale, but before the title search, or no later than 4 months after the sale?
Okay, so if the property went to sale in our historical July and it's before 4 months, they have to pay all outstanding tax liabilities due. Okay. So at that time, if it's 4 months post-tax sale, they're paying all outstanding liabilities, including that second half of that period, because it would fall into 4 months.
Sure.
And to verify what they need to pay, they can visit mytax.dc.gov. They will search by their property address or Suffolk Square and Lot, or they can reach out to the Office of Tax and Revenue at the customer service number or send a web message to the agency, and we can provide them, as of today, this is your current amount due, as well as we have the ability to forecast it for them to include any additional penalty and interest that might accrue to give them the accurate amount.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, that the 4 months have passed, but the foreclosure auction hasn't taken place yet. What would the property owner have to pay at that point in the process to redeem their property?
All right. So basically we're in the 6 month period. Prior to 6 months, they would still be responsible for all outstanding liabilities. Plus, we would have loaded into the financials the post-compliant and title search fee, which is often referred to as PCLE fee.
Okay.
But it's $380.50, and it's built into the financials, and it has a separate line, and they'll see it because we want to make sure that we are being very transparent when we outline what's being assessed to the property. So that, again, outstanding liabilities plus the PCLE fee is what they would be responsible for paying prior to foreclosure filing.
Okay. And there's another opportunity for the owner to redeem their property even after a foreclosure auction has been filed. What would the property owner have to pay in that particular circumstance?
So in that circumstance, Ms. Valentine, they would need to pay all outstanding liabilities, but then they would also need to engage with the lien holder. As a part of the process of foreclosure, there's different steps that are required. We discussed the PCLE fee, post-compliant title search. So they would have posted the notice of the sold notice on somewhere near the property. Mm-hmm. They would have also been served. And a lot of times it's either in person, it's certified mail, it's with sheriff. Those are the requirements because those have to be turned back into the Superior Court. then they'll also receive a copy of the foreclosure document, which outlines the lien holder's contact and or attorney if it's applicable. And if they still don't have that information, they can reach out to us, as a lot of them do, especially if you're remitting your taxes and you're trying to redeem your property. We have something that's called a certificate of redemption. And that is saying you redeemed your property by satisfying the taxes. If it's after the foreclosure filing, as part of the process, we will then reach out to the lien holder to confirm if legal fees have been satisfied. Because if foreclosure's been filed, now legal fees are going to be due to the lien holder.
Sure.
And that amount is capped, so it will not exceed $1,500.
Okay.
So that's the one thing that our council does protect the property owner. It's capped at $1,500, but depending upon when they redeem it, it could be a lot less. But it won't be more than $1,500. And once they receive that, then the lien holder will provide the property owner a legal release, and then they'll also provide it to OTR, so that way we can process the certificate of redemption. And just to kind of segue to that, if the property owners still has a mortgage, a lot of times the mortgage company, because they're a vested lien holder as well,
yes.
So they'll reach out to us, and a lot of times they'll try to remit the taxes on behalf of the property so that the property doesn't go to tax sale, or to redeem it prior to that. Now, with that being said, if the mortgage company is stepping in, then there's the flip side where the escrow could increase on the property owner. But I was saying that to say that the certificate of redemption is something that a mortgage company would request. But again, it's also the peace of mind, and you have that documentation that's sealed that says that my property did redeem.
Right. Okay. And I think we need to also talk a bit about what happens after the tax lien purchaser files a foreclosure complaint at the Superior Court.
Okay. So once the foreclosure process begins, again, as I shared, they can redeem their property up until the day the court order and judgment is issued.
Right.
Example, the property owner pays February the 14th, and there's a court date scheduled for February 15th. Well, they've just redeemed their property. They need to show up for court, and then they will in turn be provided the legal expense fee to be able to fully redeem. So it's an ongoing process. The key is to make sure that if it's a property owner that's aware of the situation, be proactive, respond, attend the court hearings, because a lot of times, as I shared, each case is judged differently.
Sure.
And it could be a mitigating circumstance as to someone being ill, out of the country, recently passed. And so then there's different situations where you might find a longer foreclosure case. But then on the flip side, there's instances where we've seen where it's a vacant land that might be a 5 by 100. And it's not much you're going to do with a 5 by 100, but it has been vacant for years, and there's no heirs that can be found, and there's no one's paid taxes since 96. Then that's a situation where that might be a faster turnaround, because no one's been able to locate any heirs to the person that last owned the property, and then the judge issues a court order and judgment, which in turn my unit would begin preparing the tax deed for ownership change.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you think the listeners might want to know about the tax sale process, or anything having to do with real property in the district?
I just think the biggest thing is to stay informed, know our different areas where we post communication, know that just because you might not have received a bill in the mail, we typically bill February 15th, September 15th for taxes. And you can go right to mytax.dc.gov and access your bill and stay up to date on your property taxes. I know that a lot of times when we have rental properties or people that own multiple properties, sometimes things can get by.
Sure. But
knowing where you can find them, and you can go ahead and pay and submit. You can pay early. You just won't receive a bill. You'll get a statement of account that shows that you have a zero balance and things like that. So
Right.
I think the key is is communication with anything, but knowing that we're here to help. The tax sale is our means to collect outstanding liabilities to satisfy taxes for the district. But then lastly, it goes to properties that have sat vacant for a very long time, because if you think in terms of your neighborhood and, you live in building A and building B has been vacant for a long time, there might be squatters, there might be rodents, there might be grass that's encroaching on someone else's property, causing additional infestation. So it's not just about, taxes being delinquent and we're trying to sell a lien. It's also about protecting neighborhoods and making sure that the vacant properties are either addressed, fixed, or the lien can be sold, so that way, a buyer can come in and rehab it. Or we do have a lot of lien holders that also purchase and they use it to convert to affordable housing, which some have done. So there's a lot of opportunities, but I think asking questions are the right thing, knowing that we have forbearance, knowing that Office of Tax and Revenue offers payment plans, knowing that we have the homestead benefit, the senior benefit. We have deferral programs for those that might not be financially in a position to remit taxes, and they could be put to the back of the bucket until that person passes on. And then that's when, the liabilities will come due and the family can make a decision as to next steps. So I think the key is knowing that we're here to help. Taxes are due twice a year, and we have a lot of programs and benefits that any person in Office of Tax and Revenue, whether you're calling us directly, whether you're contacting the Assessment Services Division directly, or you're utilizing customer service via phone or web messaging, Office of Tax and Revenue is here to help. We can explain and we can guide.
Thank you so much for that information. I think it's going to be really helpful to those who find themselves in these situations. And with that, we're going to conclude today's episode. We want to thank our amazing guest, Patricia Watson, for sharing her expertise and helping us understand the district's tax lien sale process. It has been an absolute pleasure talking tax with you, and we truly appreciate your time. To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did, and that you'll join us again for our next episode. I'm Jennifer Valentine, and thanks for listening to Tax Talk DC.
Thanks for tuning in to Tax Talk DC with your host, Jennifer Valentine. For more information and resources, visit mytax.dc.gov.